Hopefully,
So what is the green? Green is
right when they hit the first number in the line. So 5, 5, 7, 8, 5, 3. So 1 to 2 for tabletop.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm David Jones, Sergeant of Arms, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Tonight, we have one speaker, but we also have our Toastmaster, Eric Laxer, who is going to give us a presentation on Toastmasters and orientation, I believe. So he's going to surprise us with what he's going to be doing. I'm happy to see everybody here tonight. And how many of you have ever been to a poetry reading? Anybody ever been to? Yeah, I went to my first on Saturday. I was invited to a book launch, and I had never been to a poetry. And they had a bunch of poets giving, I guess, reading poetry is what they call it. And I was blown away because they're so powerful of speakers. They emphasize every word, and they have a lot of passion. So the lady who had the book signing, this is her second poetry book. So I'm going to have her come in a few weeks, hopefully, as a guest speaker to show us how to be so passionate about our words, about our speeches, because we all get up here and give speeches, but a lot of us don't. Okay, I'm talking about myself. We don't have that passion, whenever we talk about a specific word, where the poets, I was just blown away. So those of you who've been to poetry, you know what I'm talking about, but hopefully in a few weeks, she'll come out and give us a speech. Glad to see Stuart. I always like to see Stuart and Jamie here because when we started a long time ago with hybrid, Stuart, do you remember how many people were here when you started coming? Yeah, I like to see, they saw something great. Jamie too, and Stuart is, when we did hybrid like a year ago, it was just me, one other person, and then Stuart would show up, or Jamie. So I always like to see them show up and be a part of the club. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna turn it over to our president, Elvis Lopez. Welcome, Elvis.
Thank you, David. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. Welcome to Queen City Toastmasters. Tonight, we have an amazing meeting. It's going to be awesome. We have a great speaker. We have evaluations. We have table topics. Queen City Toastmasters is I would say, is the oldest club in Charlotte. If you have seen our page, it was founded in 1954. But that doesn't mean that we are old. We are one of the most modern clubs. As David was mentioning, we started hybrid about a year ago. Even though it was very, very difficult, you know the story about COVID and everything, but we were persistent. That man over there started what we have today as a very flawless type of meeting, thanks to all the effort of all of our members who have put and continue putting every day a single grain of salt to make this a wonderful meeting. I would like to start by introducing and recognizing our guests tonight, both online and on site. So I would like to start with the guests on Zoom. I see Caden. Did I mention that correctly? Can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Please let us know your name. How did you hear about our club? And what are you pursuing by coming to Toastmasters?
Awesome. So to start, hi all, my name is Caden Fry. I am a senior at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So I'll be graduating this December. And I heard of Toastmasters through my managerial communication course. My professor, Cheryl Kane, actually started one of the Toastmasters clubs in North Charlotte, and just inspired me to definitely check it out and see what it was all about. So I'm excited to listen and take some notes and hopefully become a member in the near future. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And now I will, for the benefit of the ones who are online, I'm going to pass on the mic so that the guests that are here can also introduce yourselves and tell us your name, how did you hear about our club, and what are you pursuing by coming up to this meeting?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Ben Mayo. I am also a senior at UNCC. Caden is actually in my class. So that is also how I heard of this Toastmasters. So we both go to UNCC. We're both in Mrs. Kane's class, and she recommended that we check out a Toastmasters. So that's why we're here today.
Hi, my name is Cadence Murphy. I am also a senior at UNCC, and Ben and Caden are both in my class too. So I also heard from Cheryl Kane about the Toastmasters, and so we decided to come and check it out.
Say your name was Cadence too, and he's Cadence? Do we have to? Okay, Kate. Okay, I thought we had the same. And Gina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Gina. I heard about Toastmasters through him, my husband. And why am I here? Well, because I want to learn rhetoric, to be specific, but my goal is also to learn to influence a really resistant crowd. And yeah, kind of polish up on some of the skills that I never really got to finish. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. You're still, she paid her dues today, so I'm gonna ignore you then since you're an official member. But we do have another first-time guest. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sapana Adhikari. I have been wanting to join Toastmasters for a while, but I never took the time to come. I recently was at a conference and I saw a good speaker and a bad speaker. And I was like, if I ever have that opportunity to speak, I want to be the good speaker. So I'm here to learn how to do that.
You came to the right place. Thank you. Mr. Elvis?
Thank you, Davey, and thank you to all of our guests. Now, I would like to introduce the person who is going to help us conduct the rest of our meeting. He is a wonderful person, an amazing professional, and a very, very good speaker. Please help me in welcoming our Toastmaster of the day, our VP of Education, Dr. Eric Larson.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Elvis, our current acting president. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our meeting this evening. This is a little bit of a different meeting. This is a meeting tonight where, as VP of Education, I've decided to go over some aspects of Toastmasters that I think are important for new members to know about. And I think there are also elements there that people who are ongoing members would also benefit from. So at 2 points in the meeting, after our speeches and then after table topics, I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation covering several aspects of our club, our meetings, and Toastmasters in general. And my goal is to help everybody who's here, either if this is your first time, learn about Toastmasters through a bird's eye view. And if you're a new member or considering becoming a member of our group, to help you understand how you can maximize all of the resources that Toastmasters makes available for us. So more to come of that in a little bit. However, we all know we cannot run a meeting without multiple participants. So I'd like to introduce several members of my team who are going to be helping me running the meeting this evening. And I'm going to start with our joke master or inspirational thought master, Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Toastmaster John Lee.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honorable guests. What have you done lately to change the world? This day and age, we are taught to live in a world of complacency, that whatever we do in our lives is good enough. We forget that we can accomplish whatever we put our minds to, regardless of the task. Henry Ford said, whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. I want to challenge each and every one of you to do something bold this week. Say hello to a stranger. Start on that goal you've been procrastinating on. Dare to go out into the world and breathe life into the monotony of normal living. In the end, we will be remembered by our accomplishments and the stories passed on from those who knew us best. What goals have you set for yourself that will get the world talking for the rest of time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster John. Just to show you how important continuity is in our meetings, we're going to go from one Toastmaster John to another Toastmaster John. Please join me in welcoming our grammarian this evening, John Capello.
Thank you, Toastmaster Eric. Glad I got the memo about the schoolboy blue t-shirts today. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and most honored guests, both here at the Vine as well as online. I will be serving in the grammarian role. And for you guests, we're all here to improve, and I'm going to attempt to help you do that. I'm going to talk about my two key roles. The first role is to identify the dreaded filler word, the ums, the so's, the you knows, right? All those things that do not add any value to your message that you're trying to deliver. Focus on the key word filler. When have you ever had a good connotation of the word filler? Something that is inserted to take up the void. Much rather, it is better to embrace the pause. Why do we embrace the pause instead of inserting it with those We do that for two key reasons. One, embracing the pause allows you, the speaker, time to think of what the next thought coming out of your mouth is. Second, it allows the audience to truly absorb what you just said. It allows you, the speaker, to have greater impact. So through the course of the meeting, I'm going to be keeping an eye on each and every speaker. And at the end of the meeting, I will report back on how we all did on our use of filler words. My second key role is to introduce the word of the day. Just let me get this. And that word is indomitable. Let's get the definition of indomitable. Indomitable, the definition is impossible to subdue or to defeat. A synonym of indomitable might be invincible, unconquerable, or relentless. You utilize the word indomitable at any point in today's speech, and I will give you special kudos. Let's give an example used in a sentence. The indomitable spirit of our newest Queen City member, Reginald Harris, allowed him to improve his communication skills in rapid succession. Now, let's try to make be mindful of our use of filler words, and I will report back at the end of the meeting during my grammarian report. Toastmaster, Dr. Eric, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Toastmaster John. For those of you who know John, you know that John is also an indomitable speaker, and it is always a privilege to hear what he has to say here. An important part of speaking is staying on time. We're usually allotted a certain amount of time as a speaker. And I heard a story several years ago about somebody important who was invited to give a talk before a group. And this guy was a good speaker, but he had a reputation of always speaking longer than he was invited for. So before the meeting, the organizer called him and said, "Sir, you have 30 minutes. You cannot go longer. We have a strict schedule. You must stick with 30 minutes. He said, "I know, I understand, I understand." The guy showed up for the meeting. Once again, the organizer came up and reminded him and said, "Sir, 30 minutes. We have a strict schedule." He says, I know. I promise you, my talk is exactly 30 minutes. So he gets introduced up to the lectern. He takes the microphone, everybody's clapping. And he said, "Now I promised the organizer that I would only give a talk for 30 minutes. And my talk is 30 minutes long. But before I start my speech, I just want to say a few words." So with that, I'd like to introduce our timer this evening, who's going to explain her role. And please join me in giving her a warm welcome to Allie Brooke.
You, Toastmaster Eric. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, honorable guests. My role as the timer is to keep time for all of the speakers and to ensure that everyone speaks within their allotted time slot. This will also help in ensuring that our meeting runs on time. To help me in this, we will light up. Can somebody help me? Thank you. Okay, so I will light 3 different colored lights. I will raise the green light when the speaker hits the minimum time. I will raise the yellow light when the speaker hits the target time. And I will raise the red light when the speaker reaches the end of their allotted time. For example, for a 5 to 7 minute speech, I shall raise, yes, I will raise the green at that time for the 5 minute, the yellow on the 6 minute, and the red on the 7th minute. The speaker will also be granted a 30-second grace on either side of the speech. I will present my report when called upon by Toastmaster Eric. Introduction for the table topics. The table topic speeches are 1 to 2 minutes. I will show the green light at 1 minute, the yellow at 1.5, and the red at 2 minutes. The speaker will have a 30-second grace after 2 minutes to wrap up their speech. For the evaluators, speech evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes. I will show the green light at 2 minutes, the yellow at 2.5, and the red at 3 minutes. The speaker has a grace period of 30 seconds on either side of the specified time. Thank you, Toastmaster Eric.
Excellent job, Allie. Thank you very much for that great introduction. So for our guests here, the central part of our meeting usually are the speeches. And tonight we are excited to have one speech, which will be given by Reginald Harris. And he is working on his dynamic leadership pathway. And the title of his speech is The Dilemma of Social Economic Mobility. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome to the front of the room.
Good evening, Toastmasters. Thank you, Doc. My name is Reginald Harris, and this is my third, as he just said, my third speech along my pathway of dynamic leadership. And my subject tonight is the dilemma of social economic mobility, which is very important. 2014, a Chetty report comes out, and this report is based on social economic mobility. And it's conducted by Harvard professor Ray Chetty. And joining him in this effort is other professors, professors from Cal Berkeley and Stanford University. They wanted to know how social economic mobility was evolving in our country. Now just think about it. Just 6 years prior, we came out of probably one of the worst financial crises, at least in my existence, since the Great Depression, I would say. And the thing about it is, we needed to know exactly how we're going to get to where we need to be in Charlotte. So what these professors did, they got together on social economic mobility, and they took the top 50 cities throughout our country, with Charlotte being one of them. And they ranked them on social economic mobility. In Charlotte, they ranked dead last. I'm gonna pause for a second, because I don't think y'all really understand the gravity of what I just said. I said out of the top 50 cities in our country, Charlotte ranked dead last. How the hell is that? How could our city, AKA the Queen City, AKA Mecklenburg County, be ranked dead last? I mean, just look at what we have to offer. I bet you we'll all be in agreement if I told you that Charlotte's probably one of the top banking capitals, not just in the United States, but of the world. Look at what we have here. We have the Charlotte Hornets here, owned by billionaire Michael Jordan. We have the Carolina Panthers, owned by David Tepper, billionaire. We have so many corporate headquarters here in Charlotte. Hell, I just read in the newspaper that the ACC was relocating here to Charlotte. We have hockey teams here, soccer teams, baseball teams, all of these major attractions. So how is it that Charlotte is ranked dead last? Now, when this report came out, I was just transitioning from my role as a CTE teacher, and I was promoted to career development coordinator. And my responsibility was to build up work-based learning programs. And I was over two academies, the Academy of Information Technology and the Academy of Health Science. And my premise was to align pathways to employment, and to also make sure that I go out there and build business partnerships, because I felt that if I could move the needle just a little bit, then that's what I was going to do. So what I ended up doing is I went out into the community, and I had to go out there and start developing some relationships. So I talked to some stakeholders, I talked to business owners, I talked to a lot of businesses within our pathways, Red Ventures, Net Effect, Ortho Carolina, Novant Health, and I invited them to my board. I had two boards, advisory boards of information technology and health science. I wanted people on that board that were so much more smarter than me. And I wanted to know, since we're talking about social economic mobility and we're dead last, what were the barriers to employment? All right, so here were some of the things that were discussed. Some of the things that were discussed, the first thing that was mentioned was soft skills. It was mentioned that a lot of people did not have the soft skills for employment. When I mean soft skills, I'm talking about the ability to communicate, write a resume, to articulate yourself, network, being on time, working as a team player, multitasking. Those things was keeping people from getting a job. The next one, relationships. I like to always give this analogy. Say right now, if 20 pit bulls ran through these doors right now at Toastmasters right now, I guarantee you one thing, we'll all probably jump on the table. Why would we do that? Because we don't know those dogs. So why would we hire those dogs? People hire who they know. That was mentioned. The next thing, background and self-image. It's very, very important that people make sure that they watching what they're doing on these social media platforms, that they're not getting themselves in trouble, that they're not starting a paper trail, because that can come back to haunt you. Next one, financial literacy was mentioned. And it was mentioned that a lot of folks didn't understand the aspects of money. You are a great danger and a risk to a company if your credit is not right. Credentials. A lot of people was lacking the credentials needed for the job that they was pursuing. Entry training placement programs. My son, I'll give a quick story. My son, 25 years old now. When he was 18 years old, he beat his chest. Dad, I'm a man. I'm gonna move out with my girlfriend. Son, you ain't gotta do that. No, I'm gonna do this. This is what I'm gonna do. Got him a job at a car dealership. He was detailing. 3 years later, he couldn't move up. He's making decent money. He's like, Dad, I can't move up. Can you help me out? I said, well, son, I have a partnership with this company called Red Ventures, Road to Hire. It's an IT company. It's a 6-month program. If you go through it, you can become a software developer. Okay. He went through that. He completed it. Now he got a ticket into the middle class and he's making a great salary. So entry training placement programs. This don't have anything to do with the barriers to the employment, but it does social economic mobility, and that's housing. And what I mean by that is Charlotte, I read, was one of the top cities in America where investors come in and buy up a lot of properties, mainly single family homes. The problem is that is they're not looking to resell, they're renting, right? And they can raise the rent up high as they want to. Well, people got to find some place to live. So apartments, they like, hey, people can't buy houses now. We got to raise our rent up too. That overall hurts the social economic mobility. So I really feel that in order to improve this dilemma that we have here in Charlotte, AKA the Queen City, AKA Mecklenburg County, if we can improve on soft skills, our financial literacy, if we can improve on career and college promise programs, and if we can improve housing, then maybe, just maybe, we can improve on the social economic mobility when the next report come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Reginald. That was very eye-opening. I would now like to call for a timers report, and Toastmaster Ali, if you can come up front and give us the timers report.
Yes. Thank you, Toastmaster Eric. You came in at 8 minutes and 14 seconds.
Okay, can we start the slides up, please? So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and go through a PowerPoint presentation. And what I'd like to do at the beginning is to really just provide an introduction to our group, which is Queen City Toastmasters. And I would like to start the introduction by just identifying who the officers are in the club. So if you are here, you are a member, or you want to join and you have a question, you basically know who you can go to ask the question. You can really ask any one of us, but if you have a specific question for somebody that you want to identify, then now you'll know who those individuals are. So you've already met Elvis Lopez. I'm going to ask Elvis to just come up for just one moment and just explain what the president's role is, just in a nutshell, so we have an idea of how you become president in the group, how long you are president for, and what your functions are as president. So please join me in welcoming back Toastmaster Elvis.
Thank you, Eric. Well, as a president, I would preside over every meeting, every club meeting. I would also preside our board or executive team or officers meeting every month. I will attend also to the district meetings and area meetings and will represent the club. Also, there are some business meetings that are held as part of Toastmasters International or the national organization, where one of the representatives of each club needs to also vote, and that will be either the president or the vice president of education. We also are part of those meetings. So basically, to represent all of you members and guests and support you as part of the club activities, but also to represent the club outside. Thank you.
So, and I am the Vice President of Education, and my responsibility is basically similar to what I'm doing now, is to make sure members of the group understand how to learn about Toastmasters, what pathways are, and we'll come to that in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. Sean Sohal is our Vice President of Membership. He is not here this evening, but his role is to help anybody who's interested in becoming a member of the group, provide information, and also initiate their membership within the group. Heather Jacoby, who's also not here, she's our Vice President of Public Relations, and that has more to do with social media than anything else. We do have an Instagram page, we have a YouTube page, and all of our meetings are recorded. So if you came to tonight's meeting and you want to watch it again or watch previous meetings, you just go to the YouTube channel and you can type in Queen City Toastmasters and our group will come up. Our treasurer, who is here, we wanted to keep his face a mystery, but now you know who it is. So please join me in welcoming Jamie Richardson, who's going to explain his role.
Eric asked for me to send a picture and I neglected to. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. So I am the treasurer for Queen City Toastmasters. This is a elected role. I'm now in my second term. You serve for 1 year. I have 3 primary roles. Once you've made the decision that you want to become a member of Queen City Toastmasters, then I can help facilitate that. So I will enroll you in our system, enroll you in the Queen City or in the Toastmasters International system and get you fully set up and operational as a new member. I also manage our annual or semi-annual dues process. So we have dues that we owe up to Toastmasters, and then we have expenses that we have to outlay, operating expenses as a club. So I manage that process on a every 6-month basis. Hopefully encourage all of our members to renew and stay engaged and active as members of Queen City Toastmasters. And then finally, I manage our overall operating budget. So just making sure on a quarterly basis, we are meeting our day-to-day operating needs, but also investing back into the club. So where we have opportunities to invest in our membership, get people engaged and excited about participating and being active members within Queen City Toastmasters, or over time, investing in things like technology so that we can support our full hybrid meeting. And that's the primary roles of treasurer. I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have about it. You can't have the role yet. I've got another 6 months, but if people are interested, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Jamie. And Colin Stifler, who also could not be here this evening, he's our secretary. His role basically is to maintain minutes at our meetings and answer any other questions that may arise for related to our group meetings and our board meetings. We also have a sergeant at arms, and I'm not going to take a poll to see who knows exactly what that means. I don't have to because our sergeant at arms is here this evening. So please join me in welcoming David Jones, who will explain his role to us.
I am the sergeant of arms. I set up the meetings, take them down, put up all the tables and chairs, the audio visual equipment. Also work with the church leadership to make sure we have a good relationship with them, because this is a great space and we'd hate to lose it. So if they ever have an issue with us or we have an issue with equipment, we let them know. And that's pretty much the role. The reason you want to be an officer is because there's a thing called, and I hope I'm not stepping on your toes, but the thing called Distinguished Toastmaster, DTM, and that's the highest level. It's a designation that you can obtain, and in order, your first step of that is to become a club officer for a year. So that's a reason to become an officer. Now, my particular role as sergeant of arms is fairly easy, setting up equipment, but the other benefit to it is you get to open the meeting. You get one more opportunity to give a speech at the beginning of each meeting, and I would be happy to give up my role only because I'm also a division director. I'm over 23 clubs, including Queen City here. So it's something I'm not committed to. So if anybody wants to do it, V can do it, but I'm happy to continue along with it. But with that, I'll give it back to our VPE. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, David. If you got the impression that David does just about anything this club needs to keep going, then you are correct. And really without him, we would not be able to function the way we do. So I think it may have already been mentioned, but just so you know, anybody who's a member of our club can be an officer. Once a year, we have elections. And if you want to commit to meetings once a month, approximately, and the responsibilities, then we'd love to have you participate. Vanessa is not here, but she's usually on Zoom. Just wanted to point her out because she's our immediate past president and is an excellent resource as well. I wanted to just give a brief outline of the way Toastmasters is structured. David alluded to this already. If you look at the bottom, you have the clubs. Our club was established in 1954. Each club is part of an area. We're part of Area 37. Each area is part of a division. We're part of Division C. And each division is part of a district. And so David already mentioned some of this, but just to give you, again, a bird's eye view of we're a small part of a really huge local, national, international organization. And as David pointed out, he is our current division director. So you've seen some of this already. I'll just briefly describe what the roles are in each meeting. We have a Toastmaster of the day. The Toastmaster hosts the meeting, picks a theme, talks about their theme, and then introduces each speaker, as you've seen here, as they come up to the lectern. We also have a joke master, or now called an inspirational thought master, where somebody comes up and can spend a minute or two providing some inspirational thought to the group. You heard John Capello, who was our grammarian this evening, and he provided a good description of what that role does. I mentioned that we have speakers. We have anywhere from 1 to 3 speakers every meeting. In a moment, we're going to hear about table topics, and I'll let our table topics master this evening explain more details regarding that. We'll also hear our general evaluator who coordinates the evaluation of the meeting. And then we'll hear from somebody who will be evaluating Reginald's speech. Evaluations and feedback are an extremely important part of how Toastmasters functions. I mentioned why we have a timer. Our timer this evening is Allie. And we don't have one here tonight, but many Toastmasters meetings also have a ballot counter, and members get to vote on, I put in quotation marks, who the best speaker is, the best table topics response or speaker is, and who provides the best speech evaluation. And it's just to introduce a little bit of friendly competition, but also equally important is to provide somebody with another role who can come up here and work on their skills, getting comfortable speaking in front of a group. And that's an extremely important reason to have that role. So what happens at a meeting? I'll go through this quickly because we've already seen this. The meeting is opened by the Sergeant of Arms. The president then introduces the club and usually will interview any guests who are here. The Toastmaster of the day will introduce the theme and lead the meeting. We have prepared speeches, followed by table topics, followed by all of our evaluations. And throughout the meeting, you'll hear a timers report, which we'll do again shortly. And then at the end of the meeting, we usually have the ballot counter. So this is really the meat of why we come to Toastmasters. We come here because we want to improve our public speaking and our leadership skills. And so the primary focus of being in a Toastmasters group is giving speeches. And a very important tool in being able to learn and practice giving good speeches in front of an audience is something called the pathway. And when we enter Toastmasters, we usually are encouraged to sign up to one of different pathways. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but I wanted to just show a couple of slides on how people sign up to speak or play a role at a meeting. And so this is from the Queen City website. Those of you who are in the group have already seen this before. On the left-hand side, if you go down, I know I can't point for people on Zoom, but that's a link that takes you to the meeting agenda. And then on the right-hand side of the agenda are boxes you can click on to sign up for different roles. And I wanted to just use, Reginald, this is yours as an example, because when you are in a pathway and you sign up to give a speech, the pathway that you're on, the name appears, so you could see it says pathways. The project you're doing, which in Reginald's case was vocal variety and body language, appears. The project description appears in this box here. And then on the other box, you have what's called the evaluation form. So if I am wanting to know what the speaker's speech or project is intended to focus on, I can click on that project description button and it comes up. So I know exactly what project the person I'm evaluating, or if I'm attending the meeting in the Toastmaster of the day, I know exactly what their project is focusing on. That other button on the right, the one that says evaluation form, will bring up a structured evaluation form that we use when we give them their evaluation. And some people like to bring that into the meeting, but even if you don't, then it's important to complete that and you give it back to the speaker either today or you can email it to them. And it's a little hard to see here, but underneath general comments, it says you excelled at, you may want to work on, and then to challenge yourself. And so those are little sections that we fill out. And then there's a scoring sheet, which we use to score different elements of how they spoke. So again, I think there are many, many tools that Toastmasters has available for us to help improve our ability to speak. When you give a speech, it's very helpful to come to the meeting early. If you're going to be using any equipment or you're using the stand here, to just come up to the front of the room. Like I'm doing a PowerPoint tonight, which I haven't done here. So I came here early and David and I went through this to make sure it worked. So that way you work out any kinks ahead of time. You should let the Toastmaster of the day just know that you're here and that you're ready to go. And if you need anything, you should also touch base with your evaluator, because often there are specific things that you want your evaluator to focus on. And if you have a 1 or 2 minute conversation with them, that's very helpful for them and ultimately you. And then when you come to the front, as many of you who are guests have seen, there's an element here of the interaction, the dynamic is important. When you introduce somebody, you wait for them to come up, you shake their hand, you hand them the microphone, and my responsibility as Toastmaster of the day is I just want to make sure they have what they need. I don't want to walk away and just leave somebody up here who, maybe needs a little bit of extra help from me who's running the meeting. And David taught me this. I called it the golden rule. I don't know if this is really what it's referred to, but the front of the room should never be left unattended. So that's just something when you're running a meeting or speaking, you want to make sure that it's like a relay. You hand it off to whoever is going to be the next person who comes up to the front here. And then there are just some miscellaneous items I wanted to touch on. Mentorship and coaching is an important part of success in any aspect of life, and it is here in Toastmasters. And some people want mentors, some people don't, and that's fine, but I think there is value in having one. And you can meet with your mentor in person or on Zoom every week or every 2 weeks, and they help encourage you to make progress, and that's coordinated by me. So one other thing we hadn't talked about are contests. Toastmasters holds 2 speech contests twice a year. There's not one this fall. They're still recovering some of how they run things related to the pandemic, but there will be one in the spring, and it's actually really fun. They're held at the club level, and then whoever wins your speech contest at the club level represents you at the area, at the district, and then at the division, and then at the district. And so for anyone who's a new member, I would encourage you to consider participating. There are some requirements that are necessary for you to qualify to participate in the speech contest, and we'll go over those once we start talking about that. And these are just a few miscellaneous things. David mentioned earlier a Distinguished Toastmaster award, but we also have Distinguished Club Awards where our club gets recognition when we do certain things, especially continue to advance in pathways and different levels. There's something called a Toastmaster Leadership Institute, which is a meeting that is held that has a variety of speakers. And then I'll come back to that toastmasters.org website when I talk again a little later in the meeting. With that, we're going to take a pause from this. And I would like to now move on to our table topics. And our table topics master this evening is Toastmaster Leon White. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome up to the front of the room.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Good. Well, today I am the table topics master, and what table topics is, it gives an opportunity for both fellow Toastmasters as well as guests an opportunity to participate in an impromptu or improv speaking session. As stated earlier today by our timer, it's a 2-minute opportunity. And I would say the goal is probably to get at least over a minute of talking. And the topic that I chose today for the questions that I would like to ask is centered around public speaking. And so I encourage some of our guests to join in table topics and really show that indomitable attitude to become a better public speaker. And for me, I think the key here is a great skill to learn how to think on your feet when you are public speaking, or just in general when you're having a conversation, because I'll never forget, I was in high school and I had prepared for this speech. And when I stood up in front of my classroom, I forgot a good majority of it. And I had to just pretty much go off cuff. So it's a good skill to try to acquire during your time here at Toastmasters. So furthermore, who would like to be the first volunteer? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Remind me of your name again?
I'm Gina.
Gina? Okay. Hi, Gina. So for the first question, when trying to become a better public speaker, I believe that everybody should have at least one public speaker that they either admire or they really like their skill, or if not a public speaker, potentially somebody that you know to be a good communicator.
Okay.
So my first question to you is, who is your favorite public speaker or communicator and why?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a little bit tough because my favorite public speaker, I've never really heard him talk. His name is Saint Augustine and of Hippo. He's Catholic saint, and he lived around the 350. His strength was rhetoric. He learned from Cicero how to speak in public, and he was able to use everything he learned from the pagan religions that he explored before he joined the Catholic Church to convince and convert many people into Christianity. Therefore, I am highly interested to know how he actually delivered that. I've only seen movies, but I have a feeling that, you know, as everyone in the church knows him, he is probably one of the most influential minds, not only in Catholic faith, but also in philosophy overall. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely agree that all of us should have a tribe of like-minded people, and to also include people in your tribe from the past. For example, for me, it would be Bob Marley is one of those people that would be a part of my tribe. So furthermore, for the next question, who would like to be the second volunteer? So for the question I have for you is, tell me a time when you heard a speech that moved you emotionally.
Thank you, Leon. It's actually very difficult for me to think of a speech that's moved me emotionally, but let me tell you about something that frequently moves me emotionally. I don't know how familiar some of you may be with the singer and songwriter Chris Stapleton. He's a very famous country singer and has been a part of a few different bands over the last 20 or so years. I'm not a very emotional person. I could probably count the number of times that I've cried in my life on one hand. My wife will tell you I'm typically very stoic. But there is one song that he sings that I will almost always end up in tears listening to, whether it be at work, live at a concert, with people at a dinner party. If I hear the song, it's distressing. The song is about his dog and finding this puppy in a shopping cart, and they decide to take it home, and the dog grows up with the family. At the end of the song, inevitably the dog passes, and he goes on to talk about, how he hopes that the dog is in heaven and that they'll see her again. Anything to do with animals in general is just one thing that will really trigger me. And so, yeah, I would have to say, to come up with a public speaker that will impact me emotionally is very difficult, but I think the lyrics of Chris Stapleton for me are indomitable, and that's what really gets me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great. And I like what he did there. If you ever get a question while doing table topics that you can't quite get an answer to, it's very much okay to kind of find another way to go about answering the question or completely go off topic, as long as you can at least talk improvative for at least a minute. So who would like to be the third volunteer? Anybody online? Oh, there. Here we go. I have a very interesting question for you. So if you had the attention of every person in the world for 10 minutes, where whatever you said would be translated in that person's native language, what would you say or talk about?
Well, I think I'm reflecting. Fall has a way of reflecting on our lives, and I'm entering the fall, I would say, of my life at 46. And as we reflect on what is most important in life, what is our legacy? What do we want to be known for? It's usually not how much money that we make. It's not about the awards, the recognition. It's about how we loved and how people were touched by us and the impact that we made on others and the connections that we built in our community, our families, our friends, and many times the people that we saw when we pushed ourselves and that were unseen that we made feel special. So may we all strive to love and open our hearts and see the unseen in each other and connect.
Yeah, that was very beautiful, Heather. I mean, talk about the stage fright if you knew that you had to speak to every single person in the world. So for the fourth question, do we have a fourth volunteer? If we have time for a fourth one. Do we? Okay. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer? Rock, paper, scissors. Okay, how about anybody? Okay. We have one more after, I think. No, okay, all right.
I really want to give a new person a chance.
Any new people that might want to?
Fourth time. Okay.
Newest member. And I think this is actually a great question for you, being that you are a new member. What do you plan to do with your newfound communication and leadership skills by attending Toastmasters?
Thank you, Leon, for that question. That's a great question. I love being inspired, and I hope that I could inspire others by being a better communicator and conquering my fears of public speaking, because it freaks me out all the time. And I talked about this last time when I did table topics. Fear has held me back for so many years, and I'm just done. I'm tired of it. So I want to prove to myself that I can conquer all of my fears, and I want to communicate to others who are in bondage by their fears that you can accomplish your fears as well. So that's what I want to communicate. And I'm going to stand here and keep talking until the green light comes on, because I always finish like at 58 seconds. I have nothing else to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Safwa.
So yeah, that wraps up table topics. So for our guests, that is essentially how table topics works. And we always encourage our guests to participate whenever they come in next time. All right, thank you. Now could we get a timers report on all of our table topic volunteers?
Okay, everybody did great. They were inspirational. Gina came in at 1 minute and 3 seconds. Stuart came in at 1 minute and 38 seconds. Heather came in at 1 minute and 6 seconds. And I would love, can you pronounce your name for me? Safwan. You came in at the minute mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Ali and Leon. Those were great questions. So excellent job, everybody. Usually on our agenda, our meetings end around 7:30. Notice how I said around 7:30 because we often go a little bit later, and we probably will this evening. So I'll apologize to all of you, but we recognize that that does happen sometimes. So I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about pathways. And I'm going to really just present highlights of pathways. This talk is based on a slide deck that is available to everyone here on the Toastmasters International website. And there are two websites that new members need to be familiar with. The one on the left is our own. That's where I've shown you the agenda. And the one on the right is from Toastmasters International. And that's where you get access to your pathways. So I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights of pathways, and most of the teaching of what pathways is usually would come one-on-one with me doing a Zoom with you as the VP of Education, or you going over it with your mentor. So there are 11 pathways. They all have different themes. You choose a pathway based upon what it is you want to focus on mostly during your Toastmasters journey. And when you complete one pathway, you can go on to another one. It can take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, even longer to complete a pathway. There is a lot of overlap in the pathway. As an example, an icebreaker is the type of speech you give when you're speaking for the first time. Each pathway actually has its own icebreaker speech. There are 11 different pathways, and within each pathways, there are different levels. And as you go through and complete the levels or the projects in the pathway, you get awarded badges or accomplishments by Toastmasters. And that's really just a way to keep track of accomplishing your goals and your levels. So just to show you briefly, when you go to the main Toastmasters screen, at the top, there's either a tab that says pathways or a tab that says education, and there's a drop down. The new website looks a little different than this. You log in under your name, and then you can either go through a questionnaire that asks you what your goals are and gives you some options of what kind of pathways, of which pathways to choose. Or if you already know you want to be on a specific pathway like presentation mastery or dynamic leadership, you can really just choose that pathway and start on that particular pathway. And once you're set up in pathways, there is something called Basecamp. You go to your Basecamp, and on Basecamp, there is a, where's the button for the light, David? Got it. Okay. So this is where you usually start to access the pathway that you've chosen. And there are buttons on the right-hand side over here that allow you to open your curriculum. And once you do that, it opens up all the different speeches you have to accomplish for each level. And again, it's basically a template to help you move through the level. Each level has a PowerPoint type presentation that you can go through that consists of slides and videos that is all put together by Toastmasters, and it's really, really well done. A fun part about this is prior to doing your project, you do a skills assessment, and then after you do your project, you do the same skills assessment again. So it's a way for you to compare what did I learn? How well do I understand this topic? And that's very, very helpful. And as I said, as you complete each level, if you're following it along on the website, it shows you where to go to your next level. And eventually, once you complete a level, you go on to the next one and you get through all of them. Sorry, that wasn't very clear, but I think you understand the idea. I'm going to skip through this. And yeah, and that's the main thing is, again, I wanted to introduce people here to the club and also people to Pathways. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Maybe we can take one or two, and then in the interest of time, just move along to our evaluation portion. So does anybody have any questions? Yes. Yes. Whoever gives a speech writes their own speech, but you're following a template. And so you might be doing a speech looking at certain skills, like how to use vocal variety, how to use the stage, how to tell stories. So it's all in the content. Reginald, sorry, I'm going to give you the mic so they hear you on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. Hey, one quick question, Jamie, to follow up on what you just said. Like, say you get feedback and you want to do the same speech over again. Like, do you remain at that level, or I mean, do you change the level on? How does that work? Question.
So there's one specific project that has you give a speech, get feedback on the speech, and repeat that speech. And I've seen that project in all of the different pathways that I know people are doing. And so you get credit for it. Having said that, if you want to repeat a speech, you may or may not be able to get credit, but we want people to come up here and do what they think they need to do to improve. With that, we will now move on to the next section of our meeting, and I'd like to introduce our general evaluator, Toastmaster Jamie Richardson. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you again, Toastmaster Eric. So I'm the general evaluator for tonight's meeting. That means I will facilitate the overall evaluation portion. So momentarily, we will hear from our individual evaluator who will be delivering feedback on Reginald's speech. I'll provide feedback and perspectives on how we conducted the overall meeting and suggestions on things that, or observations on what went well and suggestions for things that we might improve. And then I'll ask for the grammarian's report at the end. But let's start with our individual evaluator. And so today we have on Zoom Toastmaster Andrea Williams, who will be providing feedback on Reginald's speech. Andrea.
Hello, everyone. Excuse my picture today. Reginald, I want to say I am so proud of you, first of all, for just stepping up and doing these speeches. That is the most important thing. The best way to improve at doing speeches is to speak. So I wanted to, first of all, give you an applause for doing just that. Every time I hear you speak, I learn a little bit more about you and about your journey. Sorry about that. Journey through life. And with this speech, I learned about your career. I know last week we learned about that you were no longer a teacher, but we didn't know where you were. You didn't share with us at that time where you were at now. So now we know that you're a career advisor, and then being a career advisor, it prompted you to look at things in a different manner, a different set. We look at economic growth, but you brought up economic mobility, which is something totally different. It's kind of like in Michigan, they go by the walk score, and I think they have it here too, but the walk score, and I'm from a town where they were very high on the list. So coming to Charlotte and being very low on the list is the polar opposite. I enjoyed most that you had your facts, your figures, and information all together. Now, with that being said, you had a lot of information and it did not come out succinctly. And sometimes we get caught up in our own world of making sure we're giving out everything that we learned. You know how you write a essay. We have a lot of college students in here, so they probably can recognize what I'm about to say. You do all this research and you're like, how can I cram it all in these 10 pages? You can't. So that's the same thing we need to think of when we're doing a speech. We can't cram it all in. The best things that I liked about your speech was that it was giving examples from your own life and your son. Bringing those two was the most effective things. The way I would improve this speech is to simply bring in those two things at the top, or bring in the challenge of why we don't have immobility. You spend a lot of time saying why we should or why we think we should have mobility, but because the way the economic makeup is in Charlotte, we have made it where it's an indelible part of the culture where the investors are raising the lifestyle, the income, the cost of living, that's the word I want to use, the cost of living here in Charlotte, to the point where you're paying more for rent, maybe even double than you would for owning a home, which is almost impossible in this economic mindset or whatever you want to call it. So that is what I would recommend. Great inflection of your voice. Use the podium more, use your voice more, take your time, and just keep on speaking. And with that, I turn it back over to the general evaluator.
Thank you, Toastmaster Andrea. Very targeted feedback, very specific feedback. That's all we look for in terms of our evaluations, is opportunities to take those lessons and incorporate them. Can I get a timers report?
Thank you, Toastmaster. Andrea, you came in at 3 minutes and 29 seconds. So thank you.
So that would have qualified. Thank you, Toastmaster Andrea. All right, I'm going to provide the feedback and the evaluation of the overall meeting. I'm going to first start on our logistics and on getting the meeting started. We started on time. That's always our goal here at Queen City Toastmasters. We are running a little long, but we respect people's time. And so it's critical that we start our meetings on time. Our guests are also instrumental, showing up on time, being attentive and ready to participate and give your full engagement. We had a vibrant set of guests that always brings great energy to our meetings. So thank you all for joining in person. We had a ton of new members signing up for roles, which I think is fantastic. So congratulations to John, to Reginald for the speeches, for Ali, for Leon, and then also our table topic speakers as well. So thank you, bringing again that new member energy, helping us to have a robust meeting. The PowerPoint presentation actually went pretty well. So that's, I think, relatively new. So thank you, David, for giving us access to a more efficient way to deliver presentations, because I do think that's an important part of getting better as a speaker. And many of us want to be able to incorporate that into our speeches. So it's nice to have that functionality as well. Toastmaster of the day, congratulations, Eric. Thank you. I found today's meeting very instructional. What I would suggest is we've got to find a way to institutionalize this a little bit into how we introduce our new membership into the club. At a bare minimum, I would suggest we take the video of your sessions and find a way to get it posted onto the website and or onto the YouTube channel and bookmarked, so that people who want some of the refreshers around how to go in and navigate stuff can go there first as a first tutorial, if you will. But we should also find ways to make this part of the role of the VP of Education going forward. So as other people come into the role, they can use this content and this material to deliver updates to our membership as well in the future. A couple of other things just in terms of general feedback. again, Reginald, great job on the speech today. I think this is an important message that you shared with us. I actually really like that about Queen City Toastmasters is we can come in and share things that are meaningful and that we're passionate about. I love hearing these different stories from folks who have passions outside of obviously just public speaking. In terms of our roles, one that you did forget in terms of Queen City Toastmasters is the audience, right? There is nothing more important than the audience that we have in person. That's why we're all here. It's about getting up in front of an audience. It's about connecting with an audience. It's about the pressure and the stress, right, of being able to deliver a message in front of the audience. So thank you all to our audience, and thank you for building a really great in-person experience in terms of the volume and the number of people that continue to show up in person. Lastly, one idea for opportunities to improve, we all need to speak up a little bit. We now have 5 tables. We now have a ton of folks, even in the back of the room, 20, 25 feet away from me. And we are facing off against a 50-year-old HVAC system in the back that is pretty hard to hear over. So I would encourage all of you to bring your most indomitable voices to your speaking and show up here in person, front and center, and give it your loudest. With that, I will close the evaluation and hand it over to our grammarian to provide the grammarian's report.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. I will now provide my grammarian report. Okay. Overall, pretty great job. I thought that particularly for new speakers coming up here, being riddled with filler words is pretty common and expected when you first walk through these doors. And I thought everyone did very well. We had, I'm just going to go through, name a couple. I think Elvis had one. I'm going to cover Dr. Eric last. John Lee had one just at the beginning, and then you were clean the rest of the way. Allie, I think I counted 2 ums, but overall pretty well. Particularly, I think this was your first time in the role. Yes. Great job. Leon had an and an and I'm going to touch back on this concept with Dr. Eric, but you had something that I think we can easily fix, the dreaded and so. For whatever reason, that I think can be very easily replaced with a therefore, a hence, or subsequently, right? If we kind of rest on that crutch, the and so, I just think we can, it just sounds so much smoother and professional if you kind of extract that from your presentation. What else? Our first table topics. I'm sorry, Gina. I only counted one Stuart, one Heather, one so, but good pacing. You had a couple nice pauses in there. So you embraced the pause. Thank you. Safwa, very clean. I don't know where Safwa went. What else? Jamie, you were clean. Andrea, you were clean. Dr. Eric also fell victim of the and so, but you had a lot of things you were covering today. So given all the bullet points you were covering, I would encourage you to utilize the therefore, subsequently, or hence. But overall, great job. Word of the day, I have Dr. Eric, Leon, Stuart, Jamie, and I think Andrea. Wasn't quite sure. And then myself, I think I had just had 2 uhs, so I do not want to keep myself from the criticism and the constructive criticism at that. But overall, I do want to highlight Reggie. Reggie, there was something in particular you said. I talked about pauses at the beginning of, in lieu of filler words, to really embrace the pause. And you had said something right when you said, how is Charlotte dead last? Let me repeat it again. That would, you paused a little bit. If you just insert a little bit more pause, that will have even greater impact. So you were very clean, maybe one but that specific point I wanted to call out. Let that sink in a little bit more and embrace the pause. I think with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Eric as Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster John. That brings my responsibilities as Toastmaster of the day to a close. Hence, I would now like to call upon our president, Elvis, to interview our guests and close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie. Please, another round of applause to our Toastmaster of the day. Excellent job. Thank you again, all of our members and guests for being here in this wonderful meeting. Wasn't it wonderful? Now, just to close out, I would like also to hear a little bit from our members again. What do you think overall of our meeting? I'm going to pass on the mic real quick, and we'll start with Ben.
Awesome. Hello. I very much enjoyed it. I thought that I learned a lot that I'll be able to apply in the classroom and a lot that I'll be able to apply going forward in my future career after I graduate. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to be here and I'm glad I came tonight.
I agree with Ben. I really think that I learned a lot and I really enjoyed coming here. And I think that I can apply a lot of the concepts that I learned today to my personal life and my educational life. So thank you guys for letting me be here.
Hi, I really enjoyed it. Maybe I'm biased because this is what I've been wanting to do. And he just asked me, would you like to join? And I said, I've been waiting for that. So I'm definitely going to enjoy it. And thank you all for all the feedback. And I think that's definitely going to, help us all out. But I definitely need the criticism all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least.
I really liked learning about the pathways. I think that's a nice way of learning this in a systematic way. And I also liked your suggestion of coming every week and making a point of taking part in some kind of activity. So I think maybe next time.
Thank you much.
All right. And we would like to hear at last from Caden, please.
Yes. First, I would like to say thank you all for welcoming me here tonight and having such an open environment that allows us all to take in some feedback and just get a chance to hear from everyone. I think there, like my classmates said, is a lot to learn and a lot to apply from just this one session tonight to life circumstances and including the classroom as well. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. With that, I would like to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.